Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to another Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. This is an unboxing. This is a kind of like a deep dive video. I'd like to do more of these, but this one was requested by a subscriber. Asked me to jump in and explain more how Cyclopsis works for a Mega Battle, which is a good thing to know if you're thinking about purchasing him. You've watched my other videos, you've seen what cards he has, but how does he actually work? So there's only two Mega Bosses in the game, which are Cyclopsis and Mega Golgar. I don't believe they have any plans of releasing any more after this, just because it's too difficult to I think it's too difficult for them to keep making big bosses. Plus, it kind of thematically goes against it because they're not doing Zord battles. But hey, maybe then later they'll change their mind or they might surprise us. You never know. So how does Cyclopsis himself works? So if we look at his instruction roll, he's going to come with the big giant Cyclopsis figure, which we saw, his one deployment card, which we also saw, 6 Cyclopsis enemy cards, and his Cyclopsis component cards. So while you're playing through the game, this is going to be shuffled in the enemy deck like any other boss would be. So instead of Rita, Zed, or Golgar, or whomever, this should be shuffled in there. Then when he appears, whatever zone or whatever area he appears in, you move all of the foot soldiers to the next zone. I guess assuming there's a monster as well, you move them over as well into the next non-panic zone. Basically, he fights in his own zone by himself. He'll never have foot soldiers with him. So even if in further deployment phases, other foot soldiers would be deployed in that area, they will skip over him and go to the next area. He's his own boss. He fights all by himself. And so what you do then is, so normally when you fight a boss, when you actually go to battle them, you would take their deck of cards, their boss cards, and you place down 4 of the 6 cards. And your idea is you have to beat 4 of their 10 cards. I think they have 10 cards. You have to beat 6 of them, so you have to play a boss at least twice. Cyclopsis works a little bit differently, because as you can see, none of his 6 boss cards actually have any health stats on there. So how do you defeat him? When he is summoned, you will take his component cards, which will consist of his different body parts, which each have a health on top. So what you need to do is defeat all 6 parts of Cyclopsis. So as soon as he's played, so let's say I drew him, I played him in, let's say, Ernie's Juice Bar, for example, I would then form Cyclopsis. Now, each one is going to have these little red dots on there, which will kind of help you sync up where they go. So I'm going to set that up really quick. Alright, so then after you form Cyclopsis, you'll have his head on top, his core in the center, a right arm and a left arm, a right leg and a left leg. Again, the little dots will kind of show you where they go, so just in case you're having trouble lining them up. Now, if for the sake of not having room, you could just lay these out in 2 rows as well, if that's what you needed to do, but it looks definitely cooler when he's all built and bulky like that. He's like, alright, I'm big giant Cyclopsis. So what you do is when you have to attack as a ranger, you attack one of the body parts. If you have something that has a splash damage, like watch the Black Ranger, Mighty Morphin Black has where it says, do damage to an adjacent target or target a spot and do damage to the next 2 spots. You just pick one of the other 2 that have to be next to it. So if I attack the right leg, I would be able to do damage to any of the 4 because they're next to each other. If I attack the head, I could, spread out this way. Now, you could argue if you do that, you can only do the ones that directly touch. You could argue that the rules don't really specify one way or the other. They just say you have to target another spot. So it says, it says apply to an adjacent enemy, instead apply to one other component card. So I assume you could attack anything, but you could get really nitpicky if you wanted to, and so you can only attack the ones with the red dots next to them, which would also almost make the game a little bit harder, because if you took out the core, then you wouldn't really be able to attack anything else next to it. Idea. But, so yeah, what you're doing is you'll pick one to do damage to. Once you've done enough damage, that card will get flipped over. So how does Cyclopsis actually attack? So normally when you play, again, you draw, 4 of their cards, you place them down, and then as you play, then they flip over, activate. If you defeat them, you flip them over. This instead is for the 4 cards you play. You randomly shuffle his deck and you draw a card. So it's Rangers go, then Cyclopsis gets to go, and he gets to play Missile Barrage. Then the Rangers take a turn, then Cyclopsis goes, he plays another Missile Barrage. Rangers, Cyclopsis plays Arc Lightning, Rangers go, and then finally he plays Devastating Strike. So now there's 2 extra cards because some of these might let him play an additional card. Should almost never get to play more than 6. If for some reason he does, just reshuffle the deck after it's done and redraw them. And then you just shuffle these back up, and then next time you have to battle him, because you're probably going to have to fight him at least twice, like most bosses, to be able to defeat him. You might get lucky and be able to do, what is this, 10, 18, 20, 28, 29, 31, 32 damage. You might be able to do 32 separate damage in 4 attacks. But maybe not. Because unlike when you're fighting with foot soldiers in there, well, they'll also have 4. So you technically have 8 turns going on. 4 for the boss, 4 for the foot soldiers. If there's enough foot soldiers. You only get 4 rounds, 4 attacks to be able to do something to him. And now, all his abilities, though, on his card will always constantly be active. So you'll have to decide which one you want to take out the most first. Like, for example, his left arm here says, each other Cyclopsis component card has +1 health. So, until his left arm is destroyed, instead of having 32, he actually has 33, 34, 36 health, 37 health. So that actually makes him a lot harder to beat. So you might want to focus on the left arm. But then again, each different card does a different thing. Like, his core says, at the end of each battle, move 1 hit token from each other Cyclopsis component to this card. So he's going to keep absorbing them extra hits, and then it's going to be harder to take out the rest of them. So if you can't take out the left arm the first time, at the end of the turn, he's going to burn them to his core, and that'll help prevent that. And the thing is, he can get over 8, until he takes 8 health, that's going to do it. So if you start damaging everything else, if you can't beat him, it's just going to absorb into that. His right arm says, each time a ranger attacks another Cyclopsis component card, deal 2 damage to that ranger. So, hey, I need to take out that left arm so he doesn't have extra health, but then that right arm is going to make me take 2 extra damage, so maybe I want to focus on that right arm instead of having to do 5 damage first. His head says rangers cannot use Zord abilities. That could be very important to use as well. I slide him up a little bit. We have his right leg. At the start of each battle, draw and resolve 1 Cyclopsis enemy card. And his left leg says, at the end of each battle, draw and resolve 1 Cyclopsis enemy card. So, if you haven't defeated either of the legs, he's going to get to play all 6 of those cards. So that's 6 attacks you're taking instead of 4. So is there a particular order you should go? That really depends on who you have, who you can afford. I'd say the legs are probably good ones to take care of, but if you have all 5 Zords at this point, or your Megazord, it might be worth taking care of that head, so you can use your abilities, because they might help take out. It just kind of depends on what you can do. Again, whether maybe I can only hit for 4 damage. So maybe you have to take out the left arm first, and that's just what you have to deal with. And then his regular attacks are, he has 2 unstoppable forces, which will deal 3 damage to the lead ranger. He has a devastating strike, which will deal 3 damage, increase this damage by 1 for each defeated Cyclopsis component card. So this isn't so bad right off the bat, but as he gets hurt more and more, this is going to hurt more and more to you. He has 1 Arc Lightning, deal 2 damage to each ranger, and he has 2 Missile Barrages, which drain 1 energy, deal 4 damage divided among the rangers as they choose. So they're fairly typical boss cards. They're not as abusive as some of the other boss cards. I'd say they're almost like monster adjacent. They're a little bit better than a regular monster, but that's because he has all his other stuff going on. So then, as I defeat his parts, stuff happens. So let's say I defeat his left arm. You then flip it over. So now his arm is going to show the damage side. It has no health symbol, but you know that he has it. But now instead of giving extra health to everybody, it says each time Cyclopsis deals damage, increase that damage by 1. So even though you need to defeat each part to try and get rid of a thing, the backside you're going to be just as bad. Maybe sometimes worse, because he's going to be hurt, he's going to do more damage to you. So you want to try and take him out as fast as possible. And plus he's the boss of the game, so you don't want to spend 4 or 5 battles fighting him, because you're going to keep summoning putties and the other things. So either you're going to have to focus other rangers somewhere else or that. So let's look at the backside of all his cards. We have the head. If we beat that, it says each time a ranger uses his Zord ability, it deals 3 damage. So it goes from not being able to use your cards to, hey, fine, go ahead and use them, but you're going to take damage. You have to debate whether it's really useful. Like, it's not going to make sense to use the Black Rangers, maybe more from Blacks, Mastodon, to take out a putty somewhere, if you're going to take 3 damage for it. The core, because this is going to keep pulling energy to him, health to it, or damage, so it's going to take the most damage. So when this card is flipped to the side, immediately deal 10 damage, divided among the rangers as they choose. So at the end of every battle, it's going to pull all that damage to it. So if you're going to take something out, you need to take it out completely, not just put 2 damage on it here, 2 damage on it there, because at the end of the battle, it's all going to go to that core. Although what is nice about the way Cyclopsis works is because the damage is persistent. So if I put 2 damage here, 3 damage here, 3 damage here, and then I start the next battle, he keeps them damage counters on him. So unlike regular bosses where the only way they potentially quote-unquote keep damage is if you defeated their cards. They don't get access to them anymore. He'll keep his regular damage sitting on his cards until you actually defeat him. So you don't have to defeat all his things in one turn. And his right arm becomes, each time Cyclopsis deals damage, increase that damage by 1. His right leg, so instead of playing a card, says at the beginning of each battle, each ranger must place 1 card from their hand on the bottom of their deck. So that limits your attacks, but at least it doesn't kill you. And then the left leg will flip over, says at the end of each battle, each ranger must discard 1 card from the bottom of their deck. So the legs kind of work in tandem there. The right leg will make you take a card out of your hand, gives you less options, put it at the bottom of your deck, but if that left damage leg is still there, if you haven't defeated him, you have the left damage leg, you have to discard that card at the end of the battle anyhow, so you're still losing that card completely. So that's definitely a pain. So again, the problem is with this is, unlike the other side, is you can kind of decide what's the worst effect that's going to happen to me. You can decide what to maybe get rid of to help you out. Once these are flipped over, you have to deal with these. So as you start damaging him, you need to take him out as quickly as possible, or you're just have to keep going with all his persistent effects. So that was how Cyclopsis works. Yeah, definitely neat. They did a very similar thing with Mega Goldar, except instead of getting... he doesn't have a set of cards, he just has abilities on his character. So he works fairly similar as you put out his biggest character and you fight him. Yes, would have been cool if they kept making big giant guys like this. It would be neat. I think the thing though is it might be morphing because it was on for 3 full seasons and it had a couple of these guys that kept coming back, like Mega Goldar. Goldar was around a lot, and Cyclopsis was a very iconic big enemy. I would argue that there's not a lot of other characters in the other seasons, like villains, that were massive size that you could make like this. Like, yes, they had giant villains, of course, but none of them kept coming back repeatedly. Generally, yes, there's some seasons I'm sure there was a villain or two that did it more than once. But there wasn't a lot of major, large villains in most of the seasons. So I don't think they work it. Plus, then it's also trying to explain how the Rangers are technically fighting this, Zord-sized, monster. because again, we don't have the actual Megazords. This should be a neat concept, though, to bring back if they ever made an adjacent game where you have to play as the Zords. Maybe you have your 5 different Zords, or 6 Zords, you're playing a 6 Ranger, and they have to be fighting the big giant guys who have big body parts like this, but then they can form, like, to become the Megazord to do, like, more devastating attacks, but then he also, maybe limits them or does something. That'd be kind of a neat, like, different type of card game, but, like, utilizing this style of thing where you build the big boss and you can damage parts of them. Be kind of cool. Alright, that's what we have. If you guys have any more suggestions of games you'd like me to see me break down a little more components or go into more detail on rule-wise, whether it is the Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid or the new G.I. Joe Mission Critical, or if it's any other game, any of my other deck-building Power Rangers, Transformers, G.I. Joes, whatever, Zombicide, dice throwing. I got so many different games. So anything, just let me know in the comments, and I will definitely try and jump in and do it. Alright, see you guys later. Bye.